In the quaint, snow-blanketed village of Saint-Fleur, nestled in the heart of Quebec, a chilling tale unfolds. The villagers, hardy and resilient, were no strangers to the harsh winters, but this year brought more than just the biting cold. Jean, a local mechanic and welder known for his pragmatic approach to life, had always been fascinated by the legends that wove through the fabric of Saint-Fleur. Despite his logical nature, there was something about these tales that captured his imagination, especially the legend of the Whispering Woods that bordered the village. As winter deepened, strange occurrences began to plague Saint-Fleur. Livestock vanished, odd tracks appeared in the snow, and an eerie silence settled over the woods. The villagers whispered of old legends, speaking of a curse that had once befallen the area, forgotten by most but remembered in hushed tones during nights like these. Jean, driven by a mix of skepticism and curiosity, decided to investigate. He was no stranger to the woods, having wandered them as a boy. But as he ventured deeper, the familiar paths seemed distorted, as if the forest itself had changed. The snow-laden trees stood like ghostly sentinels, their branches creaking in the wind. Jean pressed on, his footsteps muffled by the thick snow. It was then that he stumbled upon an old, abandoned cabin, half buried in the snow. It was a place he had never seen before, despite his years exploring these woods. The cabin was decrepit, its wood weathered and rotting. Yet, despite its state of disrepair, there was something compelling about it. Jean felt a strange pull, an urge to discover what lay inside. He pushed open the door, its hinges groaning in protest. Inside, the cabin was shrouded in shadows, the light from the door barely penetrating the gloom. Jean's eyes slowly adjusted, and he saw that the cabin was not empty. In the center of the room stood a table, upon which lay a strange artifact, a statue made of an unidentifiable, shimmering stone, depicting a creature that seemed to defy the laws of nature, its form both grotesque and mesmerizing. As Jean reached out to touch the statue, the air grew colder, the silence of the cabin deepening. The moment his fingers brushed against the stone, a shiver ran through his body, and a series of visions flashed before his eyes, visions of the village in times long past, of rituals performed in these very woods, and of a darkness that had been awakened. Shaken, Jean fled from the cabin, the vision still searing in his mind. He emerged from the woods, but found that the village had changed. It was as if time had slipped, the familiar sights of Saint-Fleur now tinged with an uncanny, sinister aspect. In the days that followed, Jean's life became a waking nightmare. The villagers spoke of seeing apparitions in the woods, of hearing whispers carried on the wind. Animals were found mutilated, and shadows seemed to move with a life of their own. Jean felt a growing sense of dread, a realization that something had been unleashed, something tied to the statue in the cabin and the forgotten rituals of the village's past. Desperate for answers, Jean turned to the village elders, who reluctantly revealed the truth. The village of Saint-Fleur had been built on the site of an ancient burial ground, a place sacred to a now-forgotten deity. The statue Jean had found was an effigy of this being, a guardian of the threshold between the living and the dead. The elders spoke of a ritual, one that could appease the deity and restore balance. But the ritual required a sacrifice, a price that chilled Jean to the bone. He realized that the tranquility of Saint-Fleur had been maintained by a pact, a dark secret that bound the village to the Whispering Woods. Jean knew that he could not ignore the truth, for the safety of the village and the sanctity of the natural order. He began to prepare for the ritual, gathering the necessary elements as the atmosphere in Saint-Fleur grew ever more oppressive. The whispers in the woods grew louder, and shadowy figures were seen roaming the village at night. On the night of the ritual, a blizzard engulfed Saint-Fleur, the wind howling like the cries of the damned. Jean, accompanied by a few brave souls, ventured into the heart of the Whispering Woods, the statue in hand. The snow swirled around them, the forest alive with unseen presences. They reached the old cabin, the epicenter of the disturbance, where Jean set the statue on the table once more. The ritual began, the words of ancient incantations echoing through the trees. The air crackled with energy, the boundary between worlds thinning. As the ritual progressed, the atmosphere in the cabin grew heavy, charged with an unseen force. The wind outside howled like a chorus of lost souls, and the shadows within the cabin seemed to twist and writhe in response to the incantations. Jean felt a growing sense of unease, a fear that what they were doing